I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to find out my wife was cheating on me through some stupid, obvious sign. You hear about it all the time, but when it actually happens, it hits you like a truck. Her name's Emily, and we've been married for about 5 years. Honestly, I thought things were pretty good, or at least as good as they could be. She's a fiery, no-nonsense type of woman, sharp-tongued, quick to dismiss your feelings if she thinks you're being weak, but she's also got this controlling streak that I ignored for too long. Lately, I'd started noticing small things. She'd be more secretive with her phone, hiding it when I came into the room, acting like I was invisible. At first, I thought maybe she was just planning something for her birthday or some work surprise, but then I caught her in a lie. It was a stupid thing. She said she was working late, but I saw her leaving a restaurant with some guy, not from her office, a guy I'd never seen before. She was laughing too much, leaning into him like they'd known each other for years. That was the first real crack. In the facade, I didn't confront her right then. I just watched from the shadows, feeling this strange mix of anger and confusion. Then there were the texts. She started deleting messages faster, but I managed to see a few on her phone when she left it on the couch one night. Nothing explicit, but enough to tell me something was going on. The way she was texting, cozy, intimate, was not how a wife should act if she was just joking around with a coworker. But what really broke me was when I noticed her schedule. She was suddenly busy. During the days, I was testing long-duration sleep protocols for space exploration, her work. It all lined up strangely. She said she was working on some new project, but I'd sat in on some of her meetings. She was talking about metabolic suspension calibration, which I knew was tied to her space agency's deep research. It's weird because I'd been involved in the same program, testing sleep protocols that simulated what astronauts would experience during long space missions. I started to question everything. Why was she suddenly so interested in that? She'd always been ambitious, but this was different. It was almost obsessive. And the more I looked, the more I realized she'd been spending time with the space agency's hibernation specialist, this guy named Mark. I'd never heard of him before, but apparently he's the go-to guy for all their metabolic suspension calibrations. I found out she'd been sneaking off to meet him, sometimes late at night, sometimes during the weekends. The worst part was that I never suspected she was capable of betraying me like this. I mean, I thought we had a decent marriage. Sure, she could be bitchy, and yeah, she lied a lot about little things, but I didn't think she'd cheat. Not with someone like Mark. I'd heard about him, reserved, intense, the kind of guy who looks like he's always calculating something. And she was clearly infatuated with him, throwing herself into her work with an obsession. When I finally pieced it all together, I felt this cold wave of realization. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was cheating on me with her work, with this guy who's basically part of her professional life, but also apparently her secret lover. I felt stupid, angry, betrayed, like I'd been played for a fool. I couldn't get over the feeling that I'd been completely blind to what was happening right under my nose. I was torn between confronting her immediately or gathering more evidence. Part of me wanted to just explode and shout at her, but another part knew I needed to be strategic. I had to catch her in the act if I was going to prove it. I started monitoring her phone, her schedule, even her emails, just to confirm what I suspected. The worst part of all this is that I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I wasn't sure about anything anymore. I remember sitting alone in the dark one night, staring at the ceiling, feeling helpless and furious all at once. The truth was, I never thought she'd do something like this, cheat, lie, betray everything we'd built. And what hurt even more was knowing she was doing it with this guy, Mark, whose entire job revolved around space and these crazy long-duration sleep experiments that I'd been involved with too. How could she be so reckless, so dismissive of what we had? That's when I started planning my move. I needed to find out exactly how far she'd gone, how deep this affair was. Because once I knew the full extent, I'd decide what to do, whether I'd fight for us or walk away. But for now, I just sat there, feeling helpless, betrayed, and waiting for the next strike in this mess. The more I looked into her activities, the clearer it became that Emily wasn't just accidentally slipping into some affair. She was actively hiding it, and the extent of her lies was staggering. I started digging through her emails, her social media accounts, even her phone backups just to get concrete proof. The thing is, she was damn good at covering her tracks, deleting messages, changing passwords, disconnecting herself from everything that could tie her to Mark. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. One night, I managed to get my hands on her laptop when she was out for a meeting that I knew was code for meeting Mark again. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding, and hacked her email account. She never expected me to go that far. What I found was what I expected and more. A series of intimate emails, some downright inappropriate, talking about their secret rendezvous, how they were exploring new calibration techniques, and how she was so glad to have someone who understands her obsession with space and her work. Not exactly subtle, but she thought she was clever. There were also dozens of messages exchanged between her and Mark's work account, stuff about metabolic suspension calibration points, syncing schedules, and making sure her long sleep protocols stay on track. It was all coded, but I understood enough. She was really involved with him far beyond just casual work talk. The worst part, she'd even started talking about taking things further after the project was over, implying some kind of affair that might continue outside of work. That was it. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness. How could she do this? How could she completely betray what we had, all because she was obsessed with her damn job? I felt like a fool for trusting her, for believing her lies. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd been working late myself, trying to build a future for us, and she was out with him, probably having sex, probably doing things I'd never even imagined. The betrayal cut so deep I almost couldn't breathe. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I had to be smart about this. I decided I'd catch her in the act, set a trap if you will. I started planning how I'd do it. I arranged to be home early one afternoon, knowing she'd be out supposedly doing another calibration session with Mark. I set up hidden cameras and microphones around the house, just in case. I wanted hard proof, real evidence. The day came and I waited. I was a nervous wreck. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that I was just paranoid. But then she came home and her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair a little more disheveled than usual. She looked guilty, like she'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. She froze when I asked her about her meeting, her eyes darting around trying to come up with some bullshit excuse. Her reaction was classic: denials, deflections, insults. She called me paranoid, jealous, unstable. She told me Mark was just a colleague, that I was reading too much into it, that she was tired of my accusations, and that I was making her want to check out. But I had everything on camera: her leaving the house with her purse, her sneaking into the guest room late at night, whispering into her phone. It was all there. When I finally confronted her with the evidence, her reaction was instant. Instead of breaking down or saying she was sorry, she got defensive, bitchy, and outright lied her ass off. She told me I was overreacting, that Mark was just a friend, that my suspicions were ridiculous. She even had the audacity to say she was doing this for us, that somehow her affair was for my benefit because I'm too busy with work to pay attention to her. The nerve of her, trying to spin it like she was some kind of hero for sacrificing herself for our marriage. I felt my stomach turn. All the pain from the betrayal boiled over, and I realized that she wasn't going to stop lying, that her version of reality was just a way to keep her secret safe. I couldn't believe I married someone who could be so manipulative, so dishonest. My mind was racing. What do I do now? Do I just pack my bags and walk away? Do I confront her further? Or do I stay and try to salvage this mess? The emotional toll was overwhelming. I'd always thought marriage meant honesty, trust, and loyalty. Now I knew I was living with a woman who could lie so effortlessly, cheat behind my back, and then call me jealous when I finally caught her. I felt humiliated, angry, and deeply hurt. All the trust I'd placed in her was shattered, and I was left staring at a future I wasn't sure I could face anymore. I knew at that moment I had to make a choice. Part of me wanted to destroy everything, expose her to everyone, make her regret every lie. But another part, the part that still loved her, hesitated. I had to decide whether to fight for what we had or accept that I'd been betrayed beyond repair. The house was silent after I left her standing there, still denying everything, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, everything felt like a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying her lies, that smug look she gave me when she denied everything, the way her voice cracked. Just enough to tell me she was hiding something. I was furious, but there was this underlying sense of heartbreak too, like I'd lost part of myself, part of what I thought we had. In the days that followed, I started to pull back. I didn't want to believe she'd do this, but the evidence was undeniable. I stayed away from her, trying to process what I'd uncovered. I was furious at her for the lies, but also really hurt. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd worked late, trying to build a future for us, and she was out with Mark, having sex I'd never even imagined. It felt like she'd been cheating on me with her work, with her obsession about space and her metabolic suspension calibrations. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I knew I had to confront her again, this time with even more evidence, but also with a plan. I wasn't just going to storm in and yell. I wanted to get her to admit everything. I decided to set a trap, to catch her in a moment when she thought she was safe. I put a voice recorder on her phone, left cameras around the house, and started asking around her friends and colleagues about her schedule. One thing I learned was that she had been spending an unusual amount of time with Mark, even outside of work hours. She'd been traveling to this remote research facility where they did the calibration work, sometimes staying overnight. I began to piece it all together. She was probably sleeping with him, perhaps even more often than I wanted to believe. And the worst part, she didn't care about hiding it anymore. She was so confident she could lie her way out of everything. I remember sitting in my car one evening, watching her text Mark while she thought I was out. That's when I found her secret stash of messages, explicit stuff about how much she loved feeling desired, how Mark made her feel alive again, like she was finally doing something just for herself. Those messages made my stomach turn. I had no doubt she'd crossed the line into real infidelity. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally decided I'd go all in. I wasn't going to just confront her with my suspicions. I was going to catch her red-handed. That meant I prepared everything. I set up a hidden camera in the bedroom right where she'd meet Mark. I also arranged for a friend of mine to come over, pretend to be out of town, and secretly monitor her. I wanted irrefutable evidence. The night came and I sat quietly waiting. I felt sick, anxious, and betrayed all at once. Then I saw her sneak out of the house, dressed slightly more provocatively than usual, heading toward the garage. I followed her with my phone camera. She got into Mark's car and I kept my distance. After a few minutes, I watched her go into that seedy motel nearby. I knew this was it. I had what I needed. My heart was pounding as I dialed her phone, deliberately making it ring while I watched her in the security camera. She answered confused, and I told her I knew everything about Mark, the affair, the lies. Her reaction was instant. She tried to deny everything, calling me crazy, paranoid, and possessive. She even had the gall to tell me I was imagining things, that she was just working late, that I was jealous. But I had the proof. The camera footage, the emails, the texts, everything. There was no more denial. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she have done this? How could she betray me, our marriage, all for some cheap thrill with Mark? I realized I'd been blind for so long, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a liar and a cheat. The emotional weight of it all hit me hard. I didn't want to cry, didn't want to scream, but I couldn't stop feeling the pain. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd thrown it all away with her lies and her affair. I was furious at her, angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But part of me also felt incredibly sad, sad that I'd loved someone who didn't deserve it. I made a decision that night. I wouldn't let her destroy what little dignity I had left. I'd confront her one last time, tell her I knew everything, and then decide whether I could salvage what was broken, or if I'd just walk away for good. I knew that from this point on, my life was going to change forever. I couldn't go back to the way things were, not after all this, so I prepared myself mentally for whatever was coming next, knowing I'd have to face the aftermath of this betrayal head-on. The confrontation night was one of the worst nights of my life. I'd gathered all the evidence, hours of footage, the emails, the texts, and I felt like I was about to tear down the last remnants of the life I thought we had. I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to be brutally honest with her, even if it meant destroying everything forever. She came home late in the evening, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. She was still wearing that smug expression, like she thought she'd somehow gotten away with everything. I was waiting in the living room, my phone recording, my hands trembling. As soon as she stepped inside, I started laying everything out, showing her the videos, the emails, the texts. I wanted her to see it all, to understand how much I knew. Her reaction was immediate. She froze, eyes wide, then started to spin her usual bullshit. "You're overreacting," she snapped, trying to downplay everything. "It's just work, I swear. You're making a big deal out of nothing." She looked furious, like I was the one who'd betrayed her, not the other way around. I didn't buy it. I told her I had enough, that I wasn't going to be played for a fool anymore. Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're just jealous," she spat. "Jealous because I want more than this boring, predictable marriage. Mark's the only one who understands me, who gets what I'm working towards." She kept insisting it was just a professional relationship, that I was paranoid and insecure. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and sneaking around for months. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You lied to me, Emily. You lied about everything, about your schedule, your meetings, your feelings. You've been sleeping with Mark, haven't you?" She hesitated for a split second, then snapped back. "It's none of your business. You're just a tired, insecure husband who can't handle his wife having a life of her own." That was the moment I saw her true colors. Her face was so full of anger, frustration, and contempt, like she hated the fact that I was finally calling her out. I realized she'd been doing this for a while, maybe even long before I suspected, and she was furious that I'd found out. She started yelling at me, throwing accusations about how I was neglecting her, how I didn't give her enough attention, how she was just trying to find fulfillment outside of a marriage that had become boring. I couldn't take her bullshit anymore. I told her I'd had enough, enough of her lies, her manipulations, her cheating. I said I was done, that I couldn't stay with someone who didn't respect me, who used me as a cover for her secret life. I told her I filed for divorce, that I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. And that's when she finally broke down, crying and yelling, calling me possessive and controlling, saying I was ruining her life. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me wanted to tear her apart for what she'd done, but another part was just exhausted. I'd spent so long loving her, trusting her, and now I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. As she fell to her knees, sobbing, I realized I had to step back and think about what I really wanted. Did I want her back, or was this the end of us? The hardest part was realizing how much I'd sacrificed, my own happiness, my trust, my sense of security, all for a woman who clearly didn't care about any of it. I felt like I'd been played, used, and discarded. And yet deep down, a part of me still loved her, despite everything. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not when it was tainted by lies and betrayal. In the days that followed, I kept replaying what she'd said, what she'd done. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd missed signs, if I'd ignored the warning bells because I wanted so badly to believe in us. But now I saw everything clearly. She was not the woman I thought she was. She was someone who'd thrown away our marriage for some thrill with Mark, for her obsession with space and her work. And I was left standing there, realizing I'd been completely blind. I made my decision. I was going to leave. Not immediately, but soon enough. I needed space to breathe, to heal, to figure out what kind of life I wanted after this. I knew I couldn't fix what was broken, and honestly, I didn't want to try anymore. I needed to rebuild myself, to find a way to move on from the wreckage of what once seemed like a perfect marriage. If she wanted to keep lying and cheating, that was her choice. But I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. It was the beginning of a long, painful process, but I knew I had to do it. For my own sanity, for my self-respect. No matter how much it hurt, I had to walk away from her, from the betrayal, and start over. Because if I didn't, I was just going to stay stuck in this nightmare she created. And I wasn't going to let her destroy me. Not without a fight. The decision to walk away didn't come easily, but it was necessary. I spent the next few weeks preparing myself mentally and emotionally. I found a place to stay, packed up some essentials, and started the process of disconnecting from her. I didn't tell her I was leaving right away. I wanted to do it quietly, give myself time to think and plan without her spinning more lies or trying to manipulate me. Honestly, I was just trying to keep my head above water. During those weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Every time I saw her or heard her voice, I'd remember the lies, the sneaking around, the sex with Mark behind my back. It felt like my entire world had crumbled. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept replaying all the signs I missed, all the moments I overlooked because I loved her too much. Now I realized love wasn't enough. Trust was gone, and I had to accept that. The final day came. I remember waking up early, feeling a mix of relief and dread. I wrote her a short note, no long explanations, just that I was leaving, that I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. I left it on the kitchen counter, then quietly packed my things. When I finally told her I was going, she was furious. She tried to guilt-trip me, crying, begging, shouting that I was throwing everything away, that she loved me and only wanted to be with me. But her words rang hollow. All I could see was the woman who'd betrayed me, who'd lied, who'd cheated. I left while she was still crying and pleading, just to get out before her manipulations could take hold. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with deep sadness. I was finally free from the nightmare, but at the cost of my marriage. For a while, I questioned whether I'd done the right thing. Did I throw away something salvageable, or was I better off without someone so dishonest? In the days that followed, I kept thinking about what I'd lost: trust, companionship, my sense of stability. But I also thought about what I'd gained: clarity, honesty, the chance to rebuild. I realized I'd spent too long trying to save a relationship that was already broken, blinded by love and hope. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to walk away, no matter how painful it is. I started focusing on myself. I went back to work, spent time with friends, and began to heal. It was a slow process, some days worse than others. I often felt angry, betrayed, and confused. But I also felt a strange sense of strength, knowing I was finally taking control of my life again. I understood that this experience, as horrible as it was, had taught me something essential: never ignore the signs of betrayal, never settle for lies, and never let someone manipulate your love into something destructive. The hardest lesson was trusting my instincts. I'd ignored subtle hints for too long, and it almost cost me everything. But now, I know I have to prioritize my own happiness and integrity. I can't change what she did, but I can decide how I move forward. I'm not perfect, and I still have regrets. Regrets about the time lost, the love I gave away, the trust I misplaced. But I also have hope. Hope that someday I'll find someone who genuinely respects and values me. Looking back, I realize my marriage was built on some illusions that shattered when reality hit hard. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers or enemies. Sometimes it's the person you trust the most. And that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. But life goes on. It has to. I'm trying to rebuild my sense of self piece by piece, and I know that someday I'll be okay. If there's one thing I want others to know, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Don't justify the lies or accept the bullshit just because you love someone. Because in the end, betrayal leaves scars that never fully fade, but you can survive them. You can come out stronger, wiser, and more aware of what truly matters. I'm still healing, still learning, but I refuse to let this define me. I'm moving on, and I'll be damned if I let her destroy what's left of my faith in love. In the quiet moments now, I often reflect on everything that's happened. It's strange how life can change so suddenly, how someone you trust completely can turn out to be a total stranger behind a mask of lies. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you what you're really made of. I used to believe in the idea of forever and the vows we took, but now I see that sometimes forever can be just a lie you tell yourself to keep going. What's left is a new perspective, one that's sharper, more cautious. I don't rush into anything anymore. I take my time to trust again, and I know now that love isn't enough if it's built on lies. I've come to understand that you have to protect your own heart first, because if you don't, Someone will take advantage of that trust and throw you into a chaos you never saw coming. One thing I've realized through all this is that I can survive betrayal. I can rebuild what was broken. It's not easy, and there are days when the pain flares up like a fresh wound. But I also know that I'm stronger than I thought. I'm learning to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner, and I'm slowly repairing my sense of self-worth. I've started therapy, and it's helped me process all the anger and sadness that was bottled up for so long. I no longer see her image as the same person I once loved. That person is gone, replaced by someone who lied and used my love as a weapon. I don't harbor hatred, but I do harbor a cautious hope for myself, and someday for genuine love again. I've realized that life is too precious to waste on someone who doesn't value it or me. That's why I've decided to focus on my own happiness now, to be better, stronger, and more aware. 2. Anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the little signs that tell you something's wrong. Don't let love blind you to reality. And never, ever sacrifice your own peace of mind for someone who doesn't deserve it. Because at the end of the day, you are the only one responsible for your happiness. No one else. What I've learned is this: betrayal is a brutal teacher. It forces you to confront truths you'd rather ignore. But it also gives you a chance to grow, to become more resilient. I don't think I'll ever forget what happened, but I can choose how it shapes me. I refuse to let it define my future. I will move forward, wiser and more guarded, but also hopeful, because life still has so much to offer, even after the worst betrayals. And so, I leave behind the pain, the anger, and the false hope. I step into a new chapter, one where I put myself first and rebuild what's left of my trust and faith in love. Because I know now that I'm stronger than any lie, and I deserve to find someone who will never make me feel this way again. No more secrets, no more lies, just honesty, respect, and genuine care. That's what I owe myself. That's what I'll seek. It's over. I've closed that chapter and I'm finally ready to start again.